Previously on ChibiFangirl Reviews.
Well, now keep in mind this movie is so bad that I can't even remember the names of the characters, so I just made up my own names for everybody. 3 months later, we meet our protagonist, who is a cross between Bella Swan and Jade from Victorious. Guys, we all can't have Adrian. But since this is my show, I can. I wish for an awesome magic wand that was similar to Cardcaptor Sakura. You haven't broken me, Jareth, and you never will.
Oh, here. Take a look at my shiny balls.
The sexiness, it's too much. Sorry I couldn't make it to the concert. I had some souls to eat and I was very hungry. Love, Adrian. Jerk. The Shadow Realm again. Super... or not.
We are the wild ones.
My hand now. This cannot be good.
And now for the thrilling conclusion. Your leader's down. Now what are you gonna do? We're not giving up. We're a team.
Yeah, we have an entire army.
Spike, tell ChibiFangirl I love her.
You bastards! I won't let you get away with this.
You guys go on ahead. I'll take care of these guys.
Let's go! We'll be back. Not if I have anything to say about it. We're sorry we couldn't stop them in time.
Wait a second, don't you guys have super speed? Couldn't you just fly after them?
We would if we knew where they went.
You, unofficial Powerpuff Girls. You team up with BB-8 and R2 and track down where they went.
It's when do you call the shots?
I am ChibiFangirl's manager.
So what do we do now? Can I do anything? I'm a big head.
Tumbleweed, you and the other Furbies, let social media know that Chibi has been captured. Maybe we can get backup in case another one of us dies.
Okay. And the rest of us?
Until we have answers, we wait.
Take a spin on the dark ride, slowly creeping up, quickly going down. Silence. Can you at least tell me who you are and where I am? Of course. Jade Swan! It's been a while, hasn't it? Where am I and what do you want? You're in the asylum that you're supposed to be in. The other one gave you too much freedom. It's only fair since you made me and all of the other characters that you hate suffer in some dark realm. Wait, really? Did you have to take it that seriously? You don't know the pain you inflicted on us. Now you get to suffer. By stripping me of all the color in my show, you do realize I could draw on the walls. Not if you have nothing to draw with. Can you let me out? It's kind of a bad time. I got shit to do. I like planning my anniversary special. You're just going to review in here. That is, if you survive. Survive? I was gonna actually do a positive review. I was gonna review this cool video game I played over the spring called Life is... No. I tell you what you review, and you're going to review it. And if you still make it out alive, I may let you go. And if I don't? Then I guess you'll have to stay here until someone else finds you. Alright, what am I reviewing?
Why should
You're going to review the TV show Hannibal. Oh, it can't be that bad. I like 3 out of the 4 films. Oh, believe me, it's not what you expect it to be. Good luck. Okay. Hi, I'm ChibiFangirl. I fangirl over it, and you just listen. I find what I'm reviewing oddly appropriate for the situation I'm in, since I'm reviewing the Hannibal Lecter fandom as a whole, not including the books, but we'll get to that. But first, a history lesson. In 1981, writer Thomas Harris wrote a quartet of novels revolving around the famously known movie anti-hero, Hannibal Lecter, who was based off of actual serial killers. Alfredo Bali Trevino, notorious for dismembering his victims. Another inspiration is Albert Fish, one of America's first serial killers, as well as cannibal, and Andre Chikatilo was also a cannibal, and yet another influence for this famous character. The first novel, Red Dragon, was later adapted into a film called Manhunter, but fanboys really don't acknowledge that film, just because the fandom didn't get popular until the film Silence of the Lambs came out, based off the book following Red Dragon. And fun fact, this film was released on Valentine's Day. How ironic! Also, some fanboys have certain preferences on who to portray Hannibal. There's a toss between Anthony Hopkins or Mads Mikkelsen. In 1999, Harris wrote a sequel novel called Hannibal, which then spawned a film adaptation a year later. Then Harris ends the series with a prequel to the previous 3 novels, just called Hannibal Rising in 2006. That also spawned a film adaptation. Since this is a prequel, a younger Hannibal is seen and is played by Gaspard Ulliel. So the first film I'll be covering is Hannibal Rising, the origins of the famous cannibal. However, some fanboys were not happy with the conclusion of the series, thus the TV series on NBC called Hannibal was aired in 2013. Then was cancelled a few years later. However, there is a rumor going on saying Hulu might renew it and it might add to the series. So you may be confused on how this weird timeline works. First, Manhunter does not exist. Forget that name as a whole. The beginning of the series starts with Hannibal Rising. This is kinda sorta followed by the TV show, then Red Dragon, then Silence, and then the movie Hannibal. And we'll get to that kinda sorta when we talk about the TV show, since it has some canon flaws which ruin the timeline as well. The next question people might ask is reading the books necessary? Only in Red Dragon. You don't need to read the other 3 because they are really, really close to the source material. Red Dragon has quite a bit of holes, which is why the book is necessary. However, I recommend you reading it after watching the movie so it makes better sense. I know, this franchise has a lot of weird paradoxes. So the way I'll be reviewing the Hannibal franchise is similar to my Halloween miniseries. This is because the movies are extremely long to begin with, not to mention a 3-season TV show. So I'm just covering 2 movies at a time, then followed by the TV show. That is, if I actually finish it, since I'm in the middle of season 1 as we speak. I'll review in timeline order, as in not movie release date order. Afterwards, we'll talk about the TV show, and you may be wondering why I'm not just reviewing the TV show like requested. This is because for the whole review to make sense, you need to understand the original source material is first. It's kind of like watching the Gem and the Holograms movie without watching the cartoon it's based off of. Now, before we dive in, I'm gonna put on a trigger warning. This fandom may make people a little bit squeamish and uncomfortable, in which case I recommend you watch my animated musical for like the 400th time, or I hear a new episode of Movie Fights is out, you can watch that too. After this miniseries, season 4 of my show will start, and where I get to review a family picture. The first film I'll be looking at is Hannibal Rising. Most people, fannibals, or just horror fans in general, hate this film. However, I consider it to be one of my favorite films. It beat Mean Girls when it comes to my top 10 favorite movies of all time. And that film was impossible to beat until I heard about this film. So, why do I love this film so much? Let's take a look. We open up in Lithuania in 1944, back when World War II was in progress. Hannibal and his younger sister are roughly 7 and 5 years old and belong to a wealthy family. However, Hannibal's family gets attacked by the Nazis. Hannibal's parents die, and we're only 5 minutes in this film, and I'm already sad. You remember a few years ago when I reviewed Fault in Our Stars, where every depressing moment I would cut to something funny? Well, I'm going to be doing it again in this miniseries. Hannibal and his little sister, Misha, are survivors left in the Lecter Manor, and the two children are captured by the Nazis. Keep this plot point in mind because this scene gets altered in the TV show. The Nazis loot the destroyed building, and Hannibal tries to escape, however his plan fails. The other soldiers are nice enough to feed them. That's good, I guess. It may not be much, but hey, it could be worse. What? It was nearly a century ago. Don't complain it was too soon. So after looting people's homes, even the Nazis get hungry. They notice that Misha is starting to come down with something, thus they kill her off-screen. We cut to 8 years later where Hannibal is now in an orphanage which used to be his house. The other young men his age are singing songs. Do orphanages do this? I thought they only did this in Annie. Hannibal decides not to participate, and an officer takes notice. He's about to strike Hannibal, but Hannibal is smart enough to attack first. This stops everything. He pretends to be a mute and is taken to the headmaster, or whoever's in charge of the building's room, to which the headmaster just sends him off to bed. While our hero is sleeping, he gets a vivid memory of what happened to his family 8 years ago, to which we see a brief moment of Misha's death. Hannibal screams her name in his sleep, which the same officer from earlier takes notice. His hand is all bandaged due to the counterattack that evening. He sends Hannibal into a dungeon because I guess orphanages have those. But he pulls a Laura Croft and escapes the cell. He enters the headmaster's room and collects some secret documents. The secret documents include an address of his aunt, Lady Murasaki. Hannibal uses this advantage to escape and places some booby traps for the guards to step in the next morning. Hannibal gets on to return to France where Murasaki is. And from these camera angles and the way it's shown, this scene could be really awkward. Instead of a sense of hope, the scene hints at potential romance between the two characters. Though, if you see my review of the best and worst couples in fiction I did in February, this movie has a way of turning the relationship on its head. Murasaki takes Hannibal in and talks about her late husband. Hannibal plays the mute character again, making the scene even more uneasy for some viewers. That night, our hero is having night terrors from the day his sister was killed. Murasaki wakes up and tries to calm Hannibal down. She asks if Hannibal remembers what happened to Misha, but he doesn't respond. The next day, Murasaki teaches him about flower arrangements. However, he has another PTSD moment, which results in him to accidentally injuring himself. Murasaki treats his wounds and then requests him to speak. Murasaki also teaches Hannibal meditation as well as kendo for self-defense. Afterwards, there's this infamous market scene, and I say infamous because those who don't like this movie claim this is where the film starts to get really cheesy, which I disagree with. Our protagonists are out shopping when a creepy racist butcher gropes Murasaki. Hannibal decides to beat the living shit out of him, and for me this scene is more rejuvenating than it is cheesy. However, the butcher lives one more day since there's a group of people holding Hannibal back. Hannibal goes back to meditating, and thus we have symbolism of the famous mask that appears in almost every Hannibal medium. Later, the butcher finds Hannibal at his own home, and this time there is no mercy shown. Oh no, it's too soon to make that joke. That's better. Another motif of this franchise is brought up in this film. Before Hannibal kills the butcher, he shows him a picture of the butcher before the butcher even stepped foot on the property, with no reference except the image in his head. This can be interpreted as a symbol of revenge. Later that night, Murasaki notices that one of her swords goes missing. She is also greeted by a severed head. How romantic! Hannibal gloats about the murder of the butcher, and somehow the Fuzz hears about this. How? There was no witnesses. Murasaki didn't know about this until a minute ago, so how were the cops notified? The house is also on private property, so unless the town consists of only one street, this would make sense. Maybe it's the fish in the pond. Fish are smart. Hannibal is then questioned by some officers at the police station, and Hannibal gets away with murder by saying that he wants to go to medical school so he can be a doctor. Damn, that is some persuasion you got there. Not only that, gets accepted into medical school off-screen because the next scene we see Hannibal studying. Then Murasaki and Hannibal go to an art museum before Hannibal goes off to college. This is where that awkward incest subplot becomes less awkward for me, since the chemistry has died down for a bit after Hannibal's criminal history. Meanwhile, Hannibal comes up with a plan to murder all the officers that tormented him during the war. He remembers the faces clearly and draws each of them perfectly. Now, some might be saying, how does he remember faces so clearly? Psychopathy is a really interesting mental study. Most psychopaths have a photographic memory and are extremely intelligent. Therefore, the scene makes sense. To be a psychopath, it's not like ADD or Asperger's where you're born with it. Psychopathy is a developing illness that consumes a person, similar to PTSD. But enough about psychology, let's go back to the movie. Hannibal has his normal nightmare that day and decides to carry out his mission: murder the officers. The first stop is Latvia. Meanwhile, at the immigration office... Oh, hi, Adrian! No, I'm not kidding. That's Adrian. Remember my ex-boyfriend who was the son of the devil? Well, apparently he's a Nazi as well. And maybe it's a good thing I stopped seeing him.
Oh, come now. You must understand the difference between actors and characters.
I know. All I'm imagining is Hannibal comes into this character and it's like, get in the flask, Adrian! So, how you been? It's been about, 3 years.
I know, I've been out damning souls. Will you ever forgive me?
No, not really.
What if I said I can get you out of your situation?
And how might that work?
Use this at the end of the review. It's strong enough to kill your captor.
Thanks? So then we get to my favorite scene of the whole movie. Hannibal finds Misha's bones and decides to give her a proper burial. Makes me tear up every time. One of Hannibal's old tormentors appears and Hannibal ties him to a tree, sings a song, and then crushes the man to death. Why is this scene my favorite? I just have a really dark sense of humor. The scene gives me many emotions at the same time. Fury, sadness, and it also makes me crack up when Hannibal starts singing.
Es hat von lauter Pupu an Menschlein
After the guy is dead, Hannibal eats a small portion of his body. How lovely. Some officers come in and discover the body, along with a mushroom. This scene also appears in the TV show, but slightly different. But that's for another review. Hannibal returns to Murasaki, and we have this romantic chemistry again that pulls at my heartstrings.
Smell of smoke and blood.
No, too soon. You'll have your chance. You'll make an appearance, just not yet. The two spend some quality time together at this cafe, and where another one of Hannibal's tormentors come in. This one has a child, and the child has Misha's bracelet. Hannibal lures the little girl towards him so he can get the bracelet back in the most creepy manner ever. Kids, if you see a man who tries to lure you in this fashion, run the hell away. Anyway, Murasaki's hesitant about Hannibal killing this man because think of the children. And Hannibal's like, fuck the children. The girl returns to her father and the father notices that her bracelet's missing. However, Hannibal and Murasaki leave so he can't interrogate anyone. The remaining officers have an evil meeting where they discuss how each of them are slowly dying and now they're after Hannibal. They find out from not Adrian that he's from France. A detective appears on Murasaki's doorstep, showing her a photo of the recently killed war criminal. However, he knows Hannibal was at the scene and killed him. Was there a chip installed Hannibal's head? How do they know it was him? Murasaki denies Hannibal did anything. The detective says that he knows about Murasaki's family and that she's protecting Hannibal since they both lost their families. He lets Murasaki off with a final warning. However, if Hannibal kills again in France, he'll be arrested. Then we cut to Hannibal studying where he finds another war criminal and yet brutally murders the guy, this time by drowning. The detective then finds Hannibal and questions him about the war criminal that he killed in Latvia. The detective knows that Hannibal has been eating his victims, to which Hannibal responds, it could have been the crows. Now, I hate to play devil's advocate, but I have to say this again. How does the detective know? The detective asks Hannibal what he knows about the war criminal, to which he tells a story about how he lost his family, and we get to see how Misha was killed. It's sad, so here's something to lighten up the mood.
Mango, 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 mango. Mango, 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 mango. Ah, it's a pirate, he's after my booty.
The detective says that Hannibal needs to stop killing people, and he'll punish the war criminals himself. Hannibal returns to Murasaki, and this happens. Now, John.
Holy shit! We'll always love you! I can't believe you did this to me! God damn it! How could you do this to me?
See, I was just waiting for the right time. Then we see Hannibal perform human experimentation while the victim's deceased. See, at least he has some morals. He walks in on not Adrian taking a bath with a gun. Where did he get that? Luckily, not Adrian has backup and Hannibal is surrounded by men. So how do you think he escapes? Does he A. have secret ninja abilities performing a deus ex machina? B. use that human experimentation from earlier as a bomb, setting the house on fire so he can escape? C. apologize to the war criminal for everything he's done and pleads for forgiveness? Or D. the cops come throwing Hannibal into the asylum? And if you chose D, what were you thinking? We still have 20 more minutes of this film to go. The real answer is B. Hannibal sets the house on fire and then escapes. However, not Adrian has Murasaki in his clutches, and it's up to Hannibal to go save her. I'm surprised he just didn't kill her on the spot. I mean, he did horrible things earlier, why not kill her? But first, Hannibal makes a pit stop to kill yet another guy, then goes to save Murasaki. Gee, some priorities you got there, buddy. Then there's this climactic fight scene between Hannibal and not Adrian, and before not Adrian dies, he says that Hannibal ate his own sister and not just the Nazis. And then this happens. Cue something funny.
Your real name is unknown. Wow, I never knew my real name was unknown. But your friends call you Shazza the Eevee. Okay guys, I guess my name is Shazza the Eevee now. Huh, I thought for sure it was Solar Sands. She are a yandere, and everyone love her. Her fur is red colored and her eyes are kawaii desu neon yellow. I don't think kawaii desu is an actual descriptive statement of a color.
So then Hannibal goes into Super Saiyan mode, stabbing not Adrian, and I'm still crying because, oh god, this movie is so depressing. Murasaki says that Hannibal scares her, and Hannibal's like, no way, I love you, and then Murasaki flees, and the boat the two are on sinks, and everyone thinks Hannibal is dead. And the movie ends with Hannibal killing the final member of the group that tormented him and drives into the sunset. Or snowset, since it's kind of snowing. So that was Hannibal Rising. Why do I like this movie so much? Let's just say this movie struck a bunch of emotional chords with me, which most films don't normally tend to do. I mean, yes, I did cry during Sucker Punch, but not this much. And yes, there were some times where I'm waiting for the hero to beat the crap out of the villain, but not this extreme as I did with this film. Also, I did a bit of research on cannibalism just to understand the psychology behind it and why Hannibal cannibalizes other victims. According to psychologist Karen Hyland, the human body, when consumed by another human, has a large amount of dopamine, which is the chemical in our brain that makes us feel good. One cannibalizes another person, it can be highly addictive, like cocaine level addicted. Once Hannibal unknowingly ate Misha, he has a little voice in his head craving for more human flesh. Not only that, the horror in this movie is amazing. The Silence of the Lamb franchise is known for having very subtle horror. It doesn't push the limits when it comes to Hannibal or the war criminal's methods. And I mean in the sense that the movie doesn't need to tell us to be scared. There's no music prepping us to be scared. All on the characters and the reactions. There are no jump scares, which is a cheap method of horror if you ask me, and the gore is very subtle as well. The movie isn't meant to shock, but rather to add suspense. Because of these factors, it's why it beat Mean Girls. I'm sure other movies have the same factors, but I just have not found them yet. Well, there is one other film that also beat Mean Girls, which has a similar premise as Hannibal Rising, The Girl Next Door. No, not that one. However, due to it being based on a true story, and I mean heavily based off a true story, not derived from it, I cannot review this film. I cannot muster the courage to make any jokes about that film like I did with Hannibal Rising. And yes, Hannibal Rising may be cheesy at times, but if you ever read a Harris novel, that's his style. I mean, yes, I've only read Red Dragon, but I definitely understood his writing style from that one book. Graphic, silly, and a lot of unnecessary details. Red Dragon's a story that follows Hannibal Rising, however, there's no story linking on how Hannibal went to this asylum that he's in. In fact, there's probably like a 40-year time skip, and we don't have any sort of linkage. So I decided to write my own fanfiction to fill in the holes. I didn't ask for a fanfiction review. Go and review the movie, damn it. Fine. So I mentioned that Red Dragon has quite a bit of holes when it comes to development. The other three don't have too much of an issue when it comes to certain plot threads, except what happened in between Hannibal Rising and Red Dragon, because there was one long time skip. The book basically is the player's manual, since the focus of the movie isn't at all clear. I'd recommend reading it after the film, since most of the book is filler, and with that said, let's take a look at Red Dragon. We open up on a symphony where Hannibal is in the audience. He invites the orchestra over for dinner, however, one of the band members spontaneously died. Little do they know they're actually eating him. And the line that Hannibal delivers is both creepy and funny at the same time.
Confess, what is this divine-looking amuse-bouche?
If I tell you, I'm afraid you won't even try it.
After dinner, we meet our protagonist, Will Graham. He's an FBI agent with some sort of mental health issue and goes to Hannibal for help. Will tells Hannibal about his recent case of a person who's eating parts of his victims. He's uneasy about the whole case and questions his sanity. However, after looking through Hannibal's things, like any house ghost does, he discovers that Hannibal's the real killer. So the two duke it out, and Hannibal's stabbing Will a couple times, and then Will shoots Hannibal a few times, then takes him to a trial, which Hannibal is thrown into the institution. By the way, these past 10 minutes, it's not in the book. In the book, Hannibal and Will do not know each other until a later scene in which the movie provides. However, it is mentioned in the book that Will is the reason Hannibal is locked up. The movie does that statement justice, since if you've watched Hannibal Rising and then saw this film, you would be utterly confused on how Hannibal was locked up in the first place. Instead, the book opens up with 3 chapters of what a crime scene looks like. See, I'm doing you justice. You don't need to read the book. After Hannibal's locked up, he can do no harm. Will retires. Yeah, he just retires. In the book, there is a reason on why he does. Unrelated to the previous one we just witnessed, Will shoots a man in self-defense and goes into complete shock, which he briefly gets institutionalized. However, the book doesn't present that explanation very well, since the whole description is in a flashback form, and is at the 20th chapter mark. The TV series actually does the explanation very well, though. Through the way it's presented, it's more of a trippy sense, and you would have to read the book in order for the TV show to make sense. An ex-co-worker of Will's named Jack Crawford appears and tells him about a murder case because he needs Will's help. And Will is like, no. And Jack explains that Will has this gift of how serial killers think. And Will is still like, no. And then Jack asks, will you do it for a Scooby snack? And Will's like, no. What about 2 Scooby snacks? Jack asks him. And so Will lets down his barrier and decides to get to work. So, who is this killer? He kills families and replaces the eyes with mirrors and lines them up like a happy, creepy, dead family. He's killed 2 families in the past 3 weeks and in a few cities apart. The FBI calls him the Tooth Fairy, which is a really stupid name to call a serial killer if you ask me. Jack tells his wife that he's going out for a case, and the wife acts as bitchy as possible.
And I've had experience.
Yes, you have. You're paid up, Will. All of us. Even Josh.
There's a chance that I could help them save some lives. How do I say no to that?
Who cares if you have a gift of self-prize when you can have a wife who verbally abuses you? Oh yeah, in the book, we find out that at the end, she's seeing someone else on the side. Such a nice character. Oh yeah, you know how I said these films don't rely heavily on standard horror tropes? This film has a few jump scares, and it's the only one of the 4 films that contain it. Will investigates the scene, and there's definitely a killer in this place. By the way, this is where the book opens up. The killer also has a distinct set of teeth explained by the FBI agent presented to a group of trainees. This isn't in the movie, but in the book we find out that Clarice from Silence of the Lambs is one of the trainees. Well, it's hinted. So the majority of this film is Graham finding out different things about the case, and it's a bunch of legal stuff. Everyone in town is concerned for their lives because of the Tooth Fairy murders. And then Hunger Games, a reporter, wants to know more about the case, but Will refuses to give any details. Hunger Games has this history with Will, and Will tells Hunger Games to stay away from him. So, what did Hunger Games do to Will? It's never said in the movie other than Hunger Games lied about Will for a publicity stunt. The book gives us more of a background through the same flashback from earlier I mentioned. After the battle with Hannibal, Will is hospitalized. Hunger Games takes pictures of Will's wounds and then publishes them the next day in the Daily Tattler. During the Tooth Fairy case, Hunger Games messes around with the evidence, making the tension between him and Will even more hostile. Will and Jack go back and forth about Will not wanting to be a cop and how Will doesn't know who the killer is. Jack suggests that Will talk to Hannibal because Hannibal knows like every criminal ever. No, I'm serious. In this film and the 2 films afterwards, everyone turns to Hannibal when it comes to the criminal of the movie. He's like a Pokemon trainer without leaving the place he's in. So Will goes to meet Hannibal in his cell, and then this is Hannibal's friendly greeting.
That's the same atrocious aftershave you wore in court.
I keep getting it for Christmas.
I find this statement ironic since according to some articles I read, psychopaths have a poor sense of smell. Will asks for advice, and Hannibal says to grow a pair of balls and to find the goddamn serial killer. Yeah, so this is when the film does some more fancy legal talk. And if it isn't, it's usually a person telling Graham to get off his ass and do something. Graham insists that Hannibal help him on this case, however, at first Hannibal just toys with him. Will's having none of it, and Hannibal compromises. So Hannibal studies Will's evidence and the photos, and somehow from these pictures, both of them come to the conclusion that the killer is disfigured, which is why he put mirrors in his victims' eyes. Not only that, he breaks every mirror in the house, a possible theory that the killer isn't happy with his appearance. My question is, what if the killer just likes breaking things? You don't need to be disfigured to break stuff. Maybe it's something esoteric, so it makes sense to those who are in the law enforcement field, but not to us regular viewers. Hannibal fucks with Will some more, and Will gets up and leaves again. There's also this recurring pattern that Hannibal always reminds Will that the two are similar when it comes to thought process. Afterwards, Will talks to Jack while Hunger Games takes pictures of him fabricating a new wacky story. Hey, I have an idea! Instead of following Will around, why don't you actually do research on someone else? I hear Paris Hilton bought a new pair of shoes. Will investigates a second family home, and this family liked making cheesy home videos. He finds one more clue about the killer, about the door hinges, and we're halfway through this film and we finally meet our killer. This is Francis Dollarhide, everybody. The scene where we first meet him is a bit confusing. I'm not going to say anything and you tell me what's going on.
Grandma, I'm sorry. Oh, Francis. I've never seen a child as dirty and disgusting as you. Look at you. You're soaking wet. Get out of my bed.
No.
Go back up to your room.
Grandma, you're hurting me.
Shut up, you filthy little beast. I should have put you in an orphanage, grandson or not. Into the bathroom. Take off your nightshirt and wipe yourself off. Hurry up. Now give me my scissors from the medicine chest.
Please, Mom.
Take that filthy thing in your hand and stretch it out.
No, Grandma.
Now.
Please.
Look down. Do you want me to cut it off? Do you?
No, Grandma.
I pledge you my word, Francis. If you ever make your bed dirty again, I'll cut it off. Understand?
Oh, be a good boy.
Any idea what this scene means? Yeah, I didn't think so. So, allow me to explain. When Francis was born, he was born with a cleft lip, as well as a palate, to which his mother freaked out and put him into an orphanage. At the age of 5, he was adopted by his grandmother, who gave him a brief period of loving kindness. Then she went insane. This is because she has dementia, which resulted into her personality switch. His grandmother was fairly wealthy, and all her servants and cooks quit during this period when she went insane. Once everyone quits, she puts Francis through a lot of physical, emotional, and somewhat sexual abuse. The one statement she says about the film slicing off Francis' dick off is after he wet the bed with a pair of scissors. Gee, someone call social services. His grandmother eventually dies and his mother has to take care of him, which Francis gets treated unfairly yet again. Also, his mother has a history of men leaving her, so I think this is husband number 3 when Francis is put into the picture. His step-siblings also beat the shit out of Francis, and I literally cried because this novel is so depressing. And if you think that's depressing, it gets worse. So, during Francis' many years of abuse, he starts torturing animals. Francis hangs his stepsister's cat, and because of this, he is sent back to the orphanage for no one to love him. I'm gonna play something funny to lighten up the mood. Since Francis is minorly deformed, he decides to get cosmetic surgery as an adult, and yet still sees himself disfigured, which is why he's obsessed with exercise. And remember the teeth thing that was stated earlier? He wears his own grandmother's teeth, though I'm not sure why. Maybe she used to power over him and he thought he'd have the power if he took her teeth. Francis also has this fascination with this one painting called The Red Dragon and the Lady Clothed with the Sun. Francis also has this case of a voice in his head in which the voice is the Red Dragon, yet another symbol of power. Another fascination he has is of Hannibal, and he decides to write a love letter to him that is also a death threat. One of the clues that Will finds is of a mahjong symbol, zong, which means, of course, Red Dragon. Though in Japanese it means center, but I'm pretty sure that's unnecessary information. I just like to point out some knowledge I have. Anyway, Will shares more details with Hannibal, while Hannibal is harnessed to walk around in the small circle. This is oddly entertaining.
This first time, have you never felt a sudden rush of panic? Yeah, that's the fear we talked about.
Hannibal is then returned to his cell to talk to his lawyer. However, Hannibal rigs the phone line and gets information on Will's home address and phone number. Woo! Party at Will's house! We cut to Francis, who's visiting a color lab to get some images printed. When we meet love interest Reba McLean, she's a blind woman who has a decent amount of independence. Reba gives the photos that Francis needs. Then Reba gets hit on by this dork that Reba has no interest in. That night, Reba is walking home alone in the rain while Francis offers her a ride, which she reluctantly accepts. Reba tells Francis about her fascination with animals and how she always wanted to meet a tiger. Reba then picks up that Francis has a cleft lip and palate by his speech pattern, to which we have this romantic scene. John, I need you again.
And holy shit! We'll always love you! I can't believe you did this to me! God damn it! How could you do this to me?
I wasn't kidding when I said I like these two together. The chemistry is so heartwarming despite Francis's background. The FBI get a notification that the Tooth Fairy has written a fan letter to Hannibal. Hannibal, who's in a holding cell, is unaware of the note that the FBI have. And then the FBI have this weird protocol to make the note seem untouched. I'm not sure why, but they do it anyway. Will and the team pick up some clues on the note from the way the Tooth Fairy writes, and how he may want Hannibal to answer through from a personnel section of the local paper that Hunger Games works for. The note's encrypted, to which a guy who works in the FBI cracks the code, and the note has Will's home address in it. Apparently Francis and Hannibal have some sort of communication going on for a while, because how would Francis get this information? From Hannibal, of course. Jack tells Will the news, and Will is forced to move out of state. Jack also tells Will if Hunger Games is so desperate for a story that they need to fabricate one themselves. So Hunger Games writes in the newspaper a bunch of insults about the Tooth Fairy, and this results into Hunger Games getting kidnapped, tortured, and then we have a glimpse of Francis' back, which actually isn't that bad looking. And then Francis murders him. The FBI get to hear an audio of what happened to Hunger Games before he died. Francis knew that Will lied to Hunger Games in order to get a story. You know, it's times where I start to question which side I'm supposed to be rooting for. Will tells Jack that he doesn't want to do the same case anymore, to which Jack sends him back to Hannibal, who gives him the same statement from earlier. Grow a pair. We cut to Reba and Francis takes Reba to a veterinary hospital where a tiger is about to be put to sleep. To which Reba has this odd sexual connection with the tiger. Ew, it's one thing to like animals, but it's another thing to like dying animals. And afterwards, they have sex. Oh, the feels, right in the feels. However, the morning after, Reba is no longer next to Francis and is wandering outside. The dragon in Francis's head wants to shoot her, but the rational side still wants to keep a relationship with her. Afterwards, he goes to an art museum where he eats his favorite painting, knocking out one of the guards and shooting another. Was there a point to eating your favorite painting? Also, what if the paint was made of lead? You would die! Will finds a connection between the two families killed by the Tooth Fairy. They both go to the same print shop. He and Jack fly to the scene and find out about the Tooth Fairy's recent stunt at the art museum. Will and Jack go to the print shop and investigate, and some co-workers give them answers. They know exactly who the killer is, which makes Francis easy to track down. Meanwhile, the dork from earlier is hitting on Reba, and it seems like they're not getting anywhere until she kisses him. Somebody's a player! Francis sees this and shoots the guy. Afterwards, he knocks on Reba's door and then drugs her with chloroform, taking her back to his place. In the book as well as the movie, we find out that Francis is hurt by the situation, but doesn't want to harm Reba. However, the dragon has power both over Reba as well as Francis. So then Francis sets the house on fire and fakes his own suicide. The police come in late to the scene, but luckily enough, Reba's still alive and is probably going to need a lot of therapy. Afterwards, we cut to Will and his family, and when all of a sudden his son goes missing. Will inspects the house and finds out that Francis is there holding his son hostage. In the book, he just breaks into the house and there are no hostages. I think this is only done for climactic sake. So, Will just insults Francis, maybe just to get a reaction out of him. I don't know. Then disarms Francis's knife and runs the kid to safety. Molly, Will's wife, then comes in wondering where everyone is. Will sees that Francis is still there and tells Molly to duck as the two men have a shooting spree. However, he still isn't dead, so Molly shoots him one last time. So after being really injured, Will is not really taken to the hospital like he is in the book. Instead, he goes on a boat trip with his family. Then the movie ends with Hannibal writing a letter to Will when the guard says there's someone that needs to see him. Basically, the movie's hinting at Clarice's existence. So that was Red Dragon. What did I think about it? It's one of those movies I don't hate, but I wouldn't consider it the best film ever either. I like this film, but it has some issues when it comes to the execution. Like I said earlier in the review, this is the only movie that requires you to read the book in order to make sense, which can be difficult to those who are new in the series. Also, in order to release the film, this film is a direct rehash of Silence of the Lambs, just with a different protagonist. So it's confusing for new viewers, and to old viewers it can get pretty tiresome. However, there are some good things in this film. For one thing, the ending isn't half-assed like the book. The book ends with Will in the hospital and can only communicate through written speech. His team praises him for his work, while his wife says she's seeing someone else. And that's literally the last word uttered in the book. The book has less Hannibal as well. He's only seen in 3 chapters, and while in the movie we see a little bit more of him, balancing out the screen time between him, Will, and Francis. The novel only has Hannibal in the first interrogation scene, and afterwards he calls his lawyer only to mess with Will. The novel still has the love letter scene, but Hannibal is not mentioned afterwards, and he's the one who makes the story interesting, as well as to add some dark comedy to the mix. I'd also like to see a little more of Francis in this film, since the majority of the book was about Francis as well as Will, and since most of the movie is people telling Will to actually do something. In fact, in the novel, Will's more competent and does a more thorough investigation. He's still very melodramatic, but he isn't wimpy like he is in the movie. But if you thought he was wimpy in the movie, he gets worse in the TV series. I think if Francis had more screen time, I think the movie would fill in more holes for those who didn't read the novel and would have made a more interesting character. Also, be prepared for some jump scares. It's not a terrible movie. I still recommend you check it out if you like dark humor as well as some subtle horror that isn't made for shock value. I'm ChibiFangirl, I fangirl over it, and you just listen. I'm surprised you're still alive after that first review. Well, yeah, I told you earlier that I am a fanboy. I like most of the movies, except for the last film. I can still do this review, you don't scare me. What if I told you my army killed your boyfriend? You wouldn't They did. Spike is now dust, and you're all alone again. He was murdered off screen in the last episode, right after you were knocked out. Thanks to Ikari. This can't be happening. What are you gonna do? Cry uncontrollably? No. Perform a magic trick? This isn't just a wand. It's a knife. I will never forgive you for what you have done. I'm back. Oh, thank God.
What happened to you?
I was put in a place where all my happiness was taken away from me. What happened to Jareth and the others while I was knocked out?
Spike is dead.
I know. Anything else?
Jareth is gone too. Laura took him out. But the Daybreak Losers, they're still around.
Where? Your Powerpuff Girls, Archie, and the other droids are working on tracking them down. Right now, all we can do is sit and wait. No, we don't have to.
What do you have in mind?
I still have more reviews to do.